All right. So when we're good. All right. Cool. Okay, so once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day for speaking with us here out for Australia. Really appreciate this. I'm sure lots of people will find this useful. As I've mentioned, we're gonna start with an acknowledgement of country, which I should really have prepared already, but sorry. Okay, so I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. All right, so I would just like to start off with just a brief introduction, a 5-minute introduction from each and every one of you. If you can just describe your arts background, how you got into a consulting degree. I don't need, a whole history timeline. We can sort that out a bit later. And what specifically is your role in your job right now? Like maybe like, whether you're in finance or whether in management, just, just a brief description so we can really get things started off. Could I get started with James first, since you're on the first panel on my camera here?
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. James here, he, him pronouns. I studied, I didn't really make a decision when I studied at uni. I did politics and international studies, but also some sociology. And then I did a master's in Chinese literature. So sort of eclectic. And I am now a consultant at BCG, where I do a mix of public sector work and consumer work, but very much a generalist, so other things as well.
Wonderful. Scott, could we get to know you a bit better?
Sure, happy to provide a little background for me. Scott Foster, you can probably tell from my accent that I'm from the United States rather than from Australia. I currently am the Senior Managing Director in charge of technology at FTI Consulting Australia. And in the technology, we're dealing with lots of electronic data that we have to filter through. I came to this after probably my third career, I should say, first as a music teacher and a musician, where I taught high school in Texas for 7 years before then deciding that I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I was a practicing lawyer for 10 years. And then following being a lawyer, I was then asked to join the FTI Consulting Group in the technology sector, where I've been for the past 16 years. So I've gone from music to law, now to consulting.
Wonderful, Scott. Thank you. Tessa, if we can hear from you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tessa. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a strategy and consulting analyst at Accenture, which is a big international consulting company, mainly, but a lot of technology consulting, but also all different kinds of things. So my background is from arts. I did my PhD in science and technology studies at Melbourne Uni, and I joined as a graduate 2 years ago in the consulting analyst program. Right now, I have done lots of different things. I mainly work with government clients, doing various digital transformation projects. So helping to implement different platforms or do any kind of technological transformations that they need. But I also am very involved in the sustainability side of things. We have a strong community of practice at Accenture, so I spend a lot of time on that too.
Wow, thank you, Tessa. Alison, last but not least, could we please hear from you?
Everyone, my name's Alison. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a project leader at the Boston Consulting Group, and I specialise in our public sector practice, primarily in big strategic reforms, but sometimes operational things, sometimes improving service delivery, depending on the day. And at BCG, we do all sorts of other things as well. So I've spent some time in consumer and banking and industry policy as well. I have an arts degree. I majored in history, did my honours in history. I'd also had majors in English, government and German. I was very worried about my future employability with particular things besides my name. And before BCG, I joined a government grad program And that was a fantastic start in terms of getting my head around the public policy environment. I ended up spending 14 years there before moving over to the consulting world. So there are plenty of options for arts graduates, don't worry.
Yeah, so I think we just get straight into it. If anyone of our attendees today have any questions, feel free to kind of pop that onto the chat. I'm sure that's how it works. If not, I'd first like to start off with some more general kind of information. Anyone can start, or I can call names. How do you think your arts degree, in terms of skills, attributes, and just general study, how has that kind of translate over to a consulting? Like what should one highlight from an arts degree that an HR manager from BCG or FTI or Accenture would kind of look at and be like, that's exactly what we're looking for? Perhaps Tessa, maybe if you want to start us off first.
Sure, because I've got a pretty immediate experience of this, being a entry-level position and being pretty new to consulting too. So I would say that probably the best skill that I brought over from arts was maybe just enthusiasm for learning, the ability to do research and to be really interested in things, and to also be highly critical. I would say critical thinking is perhaps a term that we throw around a bit too much when we're looking for jobs, but I think that in the case of like strategy consulting, that's definitely the case. The ability to go in and really quickly understand what's happening in an organization and to analyze possibilities for improvement and what's not going well, and how you're going to act really quickly to implement the goals that your client has. Such important skills. And yeah, if you can bring along an ability to get information from various sources and be a little bit adaptable, then yeah, that's a really good skill to have.
Oh, that's good to hear. Scott, do you have any other insights?
Yeah, I do actually. Coming from a fine arts background with music, I was a musician starting at 3 years old playing the piano. And I think that probably was very instrumental in helping with my career, not only as a consultant, but also as a lawyer. Because as a musician, there's probably 3 real takeaways that helped me in my career path. One was the attention to detail and looking at how small little music notes turn into measures, which turn into phrases of music, which turn into compositions and turn into symphonies, and how those pieces parts work together. The next big thing is probably the discipline that it takes to sit and practice piano every single day. That translates into discipline in your work, and then improving your preparation when you have a certain time or deadline that you need to do a presentation, that you're preparing all along the way and it's not an 11th hour type of decision. So it takes that discipline that music also instills to be that prepared. And then lastly, probably the creative aspect that music provides as well, that it enables you to think a little bit outside the box. You're using your left brain and your right brain. And so it probably puts you a little different spin on things. Sometimes you're playing on your emotions, and sometimes you're playing on the more mathematical components of it. So there's lots of things that a musician can bring to the consulting practice.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you, Scott. Alison, if we can hear from you.
I really agree with both Tessa and Scott. The critical thinking resonates for me. But if I take that further, as a historian by training, you get taught to appreciate alternate points of view and to understand what sits behind them, and how narrative is contingent and how who we are is shaped by the experiences we have. Something that's really important for me as I work with clients to be able to look behind what's being said, understand the motivations in the room, understand where those perspectives and stories are coming from. And particularly when you're dealing with big reforms that are usually challenging, to be able to get under the hood of those different experiences and perspectives becomes very powerful when you're looking to identify a way forward and get buy-in into that.
Thank you so much, Alison. Finally, James, if you want to finish us off with this question.
Sounds good. And I think everyone else has covered all of the important and interesting ideas and put them much better than I could. one thought that comes to mind as well, reflecting on what I studied, so social sciences and politics, is, I've never talked about sociology with a client, but often the essays I wrote were centered on different types of arguments, what was true, and how to put it quite persuasively. And so, be it a fine art essay or a history essay or a philosophy essay, the art students who spend 3, 4, 7 years thoughtfully engaging in a very close way with arguments and how to make them, that's a really powerful skill that other degrees teach in different ways, but maybe not in the specific way you get with an arts degree, which has been invaluable in everything that I've done over the past couple of years.
Thank you, James. Well, next question, unless someone wants to type.
Add one more thought.
Yeah, please.
Helpful. Again, being in music, where you're, in particular, I was within an organization like a choir or a band. We often, state that the weakest link or the weakest point in the chain is the weakest link, right? And so, as a member of an organization like a team, whether it's a band or a choir or a football team, you learn to play with others. And that teamwork is also very important in the consultative capacity. Rarely are you doing the work all by yourself. You're usually engaged with others. And learning how to work with others is an important skill that I think the arts does also train on. Not exclusively, but teamwork is an area of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any question that anyone wants to bring up from the attendees? If not, I will pop over to my next question. No, not at the moment. That's all right. People are shy. I get it. So I guess one of the misconception about consulting, at least from my perspective, is that you kind of need to be kind of like a mathematician almost. Like there's a lot of data crunching. There's a lot of just a lot of things that seem to contradict the more analytical and humanities type when it comes to arts degree. Could you kind of speak on that? Perhaps I can start it with Alison this time.
Oh, you're on mute, Alison.
Sorry, I just missed your question.
Oh, that's all right. I was mentioning there seems to be a misconception that in the consulting industry, you need to be kind of, quite at least mathematically inclined, or at least come from a commerce background of like a finance, accounting, or, something that within that area. Could you speak on that? Like, is that something that you at least need to have at a very basic, like have all that in your mind?
You need to have an ability to grapple with numbers. Your clients want to understand the bottom line implications of what you're doing, whether it's a strategy problem that's quite esoteric or a very tactical, how much money do I save by doing this thing, or how much money do I get by doing this new thing? So being able to do kind of year 7, 8 maths is important. Having said that, it's far more important how you put those into a narrative than whether your math skills are amazing or not. So an ability to be comfortable with numbers, or to learn to be, which was my experience. I retaught myself high school maths in order to get the job, and continue to do so when I need to. But you need to have some degree of fluency, but it won't be what makes or breaks you as a consultant. It's all of the other skills, the soft skills, the thinking skills that are important to me and are key to my success in the role.
Wonderful. James?
Yeah, I think Alison put it excellently. One reflection is that it's much easier to teach someone how to read a balance sheet or how to improve their arithmetic to make sense checks if they make some mistakes than it is to teach someone how to fundamentally think about problems in deeper ways, or to be sort of a more thoughtful communicator. And so it's not a high barrier to entry. And if I sort of share an anecdote from when I was applying for my current job, I made so many mistakes in my interviews, but I acknowledged them and I was self-aware. And so the interviewer thought, yeah, we'll give him a calculator when he's doing the job, and he sort of doesn't have a blind spot. So important to learn at some point, but not a barrier to entering the profession, I don't think.
Scott, maybe if you can add a little bit more onto that.
Yeah, I agree with many of the things that Allison and James were saying, including especially the soft skills. As a consulting practice, we're oftentimes advising clients on a particular perspective. And so with that comes elements of presentation, communication, teaching, and being persuasive. And those skills that I've just mentioned have absolutely nothing to do with mathematics. It's dealing with your emotional intelligence. Can you read the room? Can you understand the perspective of the other person and what they might be feeling? So truly it's those communication skills. And I say that from somebody who's coming from a technical background where indeed we do a lot of number crunching and we have to deal with a lot of details like that. But it's truly in the advisory and the consulting and the communication capacity that I think is really the skill set that is most defining.
Absolutely. Tessa, if we can finish off the question with you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that's been said, particularly the importance of being able to put things into a narrative. It's particularly interesting in a company like Accenture because there's so much of an emphasis on like data-driven consulting, which is so important to like a lot of big clients because they have like just tons and tons of data and they don't know what to do with it. And we have a lot of specialists in the company who can take that data and turn it into information. So we have a lot of numbers, and there are a lot of numbers in the world and that we deal with and that we take to clients. But I think that one of the most important skills that a consultant has that I've, in my experience, is being able to get information from that data, which is something that everybody struggles with. But yeah, it's about like also the qualitative side of things as well as the data side of things. And in a huge company like Accenture, I would also say if you do join a huge consultancy, then maybe like a lack of math skills will limit you in your ability to do exactly what you want to do. But in those cases, then what you want to do probably isn't like necessarily for you. If you are able to pick up skills like Excel skills, which is what I've been able to do in order to achieve your career goals, then that's something that you're going to succeed at and that you're going to really enjoy. So I think that you don't need to have strong math skills or even like strong analytical skills, but and there are going to be opportunities out there. You just have to be aware of what the role entails and yeah, what your goals are.
Sounds like a willingness to learn seems to be the key point here. We hear, I think I heard a little bit about your day of like what your job is done in a more general sense. However, I would like to go with each and one of you and maybe just describe, what is a typical day at your job? Maybe we can get started with James.
I think it varies a lot depending on the specific case you're on or the specific part of the case you're on, given that topic. For example, today, I'm working on a sort of digital transformation on a specific sort of project we're standing up within it. And today I had a bunch of workshops working with people that are central to that. A lot of one-on-one catch-ups afterwards to try and push people's thinking in the right direction. A few sort of expert interviews and calls trying to make sure we understood the topic in the right way. And then there was a fair bit of sort of framing things up in slides or ways that people who are time poor could understand. But then there are other cases which are much more quantitative, where you're sitting in Excel most of the time, or you're just talking to people, or you're at a mine site trying to improve their operations. So it's pretty variable, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much.
Lovely. Scott, if we can hear from you.
Sure. I would say that I probably spend half my day on the telephone as the Senior Managing Director of Technology. My workload working with clients is probably reduced to about 25% of my day. The rest of it is more management, and management including dealing with my staff, hiring, coordinating profit and losses statements, and looking at revenue targets and vision planning, all those types of things, to help make sure that the practice is running smoothly, including running team meetings and ensuring that all aspects are firing on all cylinders if that's possible. I think of myself as a facilitator. And so my day is oftentimes touching base with my team and on occasion as well, reaching out to clients.
Lovely, thank you. Tessa, if we can hear from you.
Sure. So in my current role, I'm embedded in a client team in a huge, big program. A lot of my work is as a business analyst, which is a very common thing that you'll end up doing if you're in a technology consulting role as an entry-level position. Looking at user research and trying to turn that into things that technology delivery people can turn into software or whatever it is. And also as an analyst, I do a lot of project management, so tracking the progress of various tasks, organizing meetings, just making sure that everyone knows what they need to do at all the different times. So a lot of coordination work.
Wonderful. And finally, Alison, would love to hear from you.
I'm a middle manager in the consulting world, and so my role is orchestrator more than anything else. So it's a little bit of solving the problem and being the lead on that. How are we going to think about this? How are we going to get to the answer really quickly? Part of it's about anticipating what we need to do and making sure the team is lined up against that, thinking of the expert inputs we need from the seniors in our team or from the client or maybe from outside, and then making sure it all comes together. Does the story make sense? Will this excite the client? Will it deliver the kind of value they're looking for? And if not, how the hell are we going to fix that between the meeting that's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?
Well, thank you. I think what I want to do now is maybe ask more specific questions about each of the firm that you're in, maybe do a little pitching style against each and one of you. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, James, Tessa, you both from Accenture? That's correct?
I'm from Accenture.
Yes, and James, you also from Accenture, if I remember correctly?
I'm from BCG with Alison.
Oh, BCG. Oh, sorry, I forgot. There's two. Yeah, there were two members that were the same. Okay, if that's the case, James, Alison, could we maybe talk about? I'd love to hear about the kind of queer culture, LGBTI, support that BCG has for the queer identifying kind of members. Yeah, whoever wants to start can go first.
I might start. I joined BCG because of the Pride Network. I was looking at opportunities in the consulting world. BCG held a Pride event the week I started to think about who I was going to approach, so it felt like a sign. Now, I'm sure the other major firms have similar things, but it was the one that caught my eye. I went along to an event. I met members of the Pride Network. They introduced me to the recruiting team and were quite an important part of my preparation. As I mentioned, I needed to learn some things like maths and consulting and case interviews and quite a lot, to be honest. So those people were part of that preparation journey. And then once I joined the firm, it's a big adjustment, right? You're changing careers, a big place with lots of different things going on, and people not in the office very often because you're often out at client side. So Pride was my home within BCG. It was a place to hang out, a group of like-minded people. I always felt like I had a home. I've since found others, but that Pride one has been probably the first and the most important. And I really value the connections I have to James and colleagues in that group. It's a really important part of the job for me.
That's lovely. James, do you want to add anything about BCG's Pride Network or just your personal experience?
My experience is really similar to Alison's. When I was thinking about consultancies to apply to, I had a few queer friends at BCG. I spoke to them about it and they spoke about the network. And it's since become a community that in part is sort of running events and engaging with the broader firm on things like days of significance in the year or events that raise visibility, but it's also just a group of people who have fun with each other. So I like Alison and get on really well with her, and I'm not just saying that because she's my boss. And there's something just about that general affinity or similarity that's really helpful when you're, in my case, moving to Sydney for the first time. Know essentially two people in the city and are thrown into a new job in a new industry that you don't know much about.
Wow. Tessa, could we hear from Accenture?
Sure. So there's a pretty active Pride network, of which I'm a member. I didn't know too much about it when I first started, but I did hear a lot about the positive employee culture at Accenture, which was important to me because I'm a queer woman and I also have an invisible disability. So I was really concerned about that. And I was highly cynical about the corporate culture. I didn't really think that they would necessarily live those values and that maybe it was just branding, but I have found that it's quite positive. The Pride Network is very active, and like James and Alison have experienced, it's sort of like a place to hang out. It's something like a home. And there are very few people at Accenture whose job it is to maintain that network. Most people who are involved can do it as an extracurricular or like a +1 on top of their day job. So it's people who are really genuinely interested and enthusiastic and really, really want to make it a priority for the firm. So there's a huge emphasis on ally training and things like that. But I think also it's maybe more valuable at Accenture because I think inclusion and diversity is really valuable in technology. And as technology consultants, it's something that we have to think about a lot. And so like senior leadership really is quite genuine, I think, in its internal approach and also what it brings to clients.
Absolutely. And finally, Scott, Helen from FTI, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting enough to first start off with perhaps Steve Gumby, who is our CEO, was formerly from Boston BCG Group as well. And so we're happy to have him now leading our FTI practice. And I can honestly say, probably through a story, that the diversity and inclusion initiatives that also includes pro bono and win activities, anything that's dealing with trying to be your authentic self and being helpful of that is something that we encourage at FTI. We empower people and encourage them to participate and get involved. A prime example of this is, years ago, 3 years ago, when Orlando had experienced the outrage of a shooting incident over at the Pulse nightclub, and many people passed away in that incident. Soon thereafter, I and a colleague of mine at FTI literally called up Steve Gumby, our CEO at the time, and said, we need to do something. We need to make a contribution, a donation. And he basically said, yes, of course, that's a no-brainer. And immediately FTI's provided a donation and a matching contribution from our employees as well. So that's the type of thing that we want to foster, that type of growth and diversity and inclusion. And we encourage other companies like BCG and Accenture, who are also equally situated in reaching out to the community to continue that diversity element.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember reading about Pulse, and that was just heartbreaking. I mean, oh gosh. But obviously, I think there's a misconception that Australian corporate and just generally corporate cultures very just doing it for the showing face, in the sense that they would say, oh, we love diversity, we love inclusion, but it only goes so far as Facebook marketing. And I think we can show that that's not the case, and that's why Up Australia is so keen on getting students involved with mentorship, because corporate Australia is actually one of the most welcoming kind of environment that you can be in as a queer person. We actually do have an audience question. Thank you, Casimir Lim. Apologize if I got your name pronunciation wrong. So he wants to, sorry, I assume I'm sorry, I'm just referred to Casimir. Wants to know that respective consulting firms, what does your firm expect from your grads? And conversely, what could someone who has just joined a firm, Kazi goes by he, him, what could someone who has just joined a firm expect from those who are already there? So kind of like the work culture, I guess that's what he was trying to get into, like what is it that you expect someone that just got on the job? What do you expect them to be doing already? Maybe we can get started with Tessa with Accenture.
Sure. I can reflect on my own experience of joining. It's probably quite a steep learning curve, I suppose, but in terms of corporate culture, it is so welcoming and so supportive. At Accenture, everybody has a people lead, so somebody that is your like your guide, your support in the firm, because it's such a huge company and you could end up doing all sorts of different things. You could be on all different projects, and that person is the person who's sort of on your side. But you'll also be welcomed into different groups, whatever it sort of interests you. If you're interested in a particular community of practice or a particular interest like pride, or you want to do various different extracurricular things, then you will be welcomed. And hopefully when for anyone who's joining, it'll be once there's more face-to-face events.
Absolutely. Scott, what does FTA expect from the grad, and what can a grad expect from FTI?
Oh, exactly. I think we expect our grads and new hires to be very ambitious, to learn as much as you can. Take notes, for example. And people are enthusiastic to train other people and share with them, this is my experience. And we're hoping from the new hires and the grads that they would sit there and try to absorb as much as they possibly can. Not just from one person, but reach out to several people, learn the practice, get to know people. It's through those connections that we really do grow as a team.
Thank you. And finally, from BCG, Alison and James, could you speak a little bit about what someone might expect and what they'll be expected to do?
I'll echo the openness to learning. That's such an important part of the job, and BCG is proud of its rich feedback culture, as we would call it. But it is coaching in the absolute spirit of, we can see your potential and we want to help you get there. And where we can see those areas to help you, you will get that help. I think conversely from grads, that attitude of openness to, yes, I want to take that on. I want to find different ways through these problems, and I'm going to apply myself with enthusiasm to the huge range of experiences you'll get. And we try and back that up with a genuine collaborative team culture where we have some fun, even over Zoom. And so you work hard, but you also play hard, which is an important counterbalance to working hard, I think. You do need to see the bigger picture of what you're doing and see the impact in those closer relationships with your colleagues, the impact with your clients. It's a holistic picture, not just one thing. James?
Absolutely, yeah. James, yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely with Alison, and giving some concreteness from when I started as a grad 2 years ago. I arrived with no commercial background and little commercial sense. I didn't know how to use Excel at all, and I'd never made a PowerPoint slide since probably grade 10 for some school project. But there's this apprenticeship model where for 3, 6, 12 months, however long it takes for a particular graduate, people are there to answer all of your questions, show you the ropes, figure out what you enjoy more and help you start there. And because there is that structured apprenticeship, it is just about, to Scott and Tessa's points, having the right attitude, because, the potential you have plus the right attitude plus the processes that the firm has in place means that 12 months later, you'll all look the same, which is in a great position and doing great work.
Thank you, Jane.
If I can give an example from my own experience, the first project that I did when I started at Accenture was in a developer role, which is something that I had never, ever imagined that I would do. So like coding, basically. So I was supported to get a certification and to do all the practice that was needed, and I was helped out by people on the project. But it was clear that it wasn't for me. So I was sort of moved into a different role, but it was so well looked upon that I had that open mind, and I'd really dived into it and, made a lot of effort to really do what was needed. So they will take care of you, but, you've got to have an open mind, I guess.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, Kazi, for the question. The question bar is still open. However, if no one has any question at the moment, I think I will move on to one of my own question. So this came from, I was bored one day. I mean, I was procrastinating, trying to avoid my work. And I came across a YouTube video for Bain interview process. And I remember watching it and going, you have to complete a case study on the spot. Like you're given like just facts and scenario and some paper and the calculator, and you have to just do that thing. What exactly is that? Could maybe each and one of you describe what that looks like, or alternatively, what does a interview hiring process would look like for your respective company? I mean, we can start with James and Alison, BCG.
I might throw to Alison first on this one.
So this nearly put me off joining consulting, the prospect of having to go through this case interview progress. But the advice I got was, it's just pattern learning. You just need to see enough of them and you will start to understand what it is people are looking for. It was a little bit more than that for me. I spent 8 weeks studying pretty solidly to get my head around the skills that I didn't have, the format, the ability to do the kind of maths that's required in the interview, which, as I mentioned, high school level, but I wasn't fluent in it at that point in time. There are a stack of online resources that will help you kind of navigate what it is that the firms are looking for, which is a great start. But I would add that to a certain extent, that's something you can study and prepare for. What we're looking for is that creativity and curiosity and a personality that is going to make a difference in our teams and with our clients, which brings me back to the theme of this conversation that I made maths mistakes in at least 2 of my 4 interviews. I clearly got thrown points on the other side. And so don't underestimate the richness of your interpersonal skills, the richness of your strategic and critical thinking skills. Do your homework, you will need to, around the particular process you're being asked to do, but don't underestimate the other things you have to bring to that process, and your interviewer will be curious and interested to draw those out.
Absolutely. James, is there anything you'd like to add from your experience?
A couple of very small builds. I think building on Alison's point that it's worth doing your homework about each firm. Firms do have slightly different understandings of what a case interview is. When I applied to some firms, it was very much what you might call like estimation games. I had to answer the question, how many stand-up paddle boards did we sell in the Gulf in 2012? Sometimes it's much more structured case interviews like you'll find on the online resources. Sometimes it's somewhere in between. And so it's worth having a sense of that so you know how to be dangerous going in. But then I suppose the other point as well is more often than not, people can get the feedback that they're applying a framework or something they found a bit too crudely. So those are useful to have guardrails in place and to make sure you sort of aren't going in blind. But once you're there, as Alison said, it's ultimately going to be creatively responding to the specific problem that you're given on the day.
Thank you. Scott, someone in your position, what can you tell us? Any kind of insider tip?
Yeah, when I go through the interview process, it's probably a little bit non-standard. I'm usually trying to figure out, how does this person think? Are they detail-oriented? What is their emotional intelligence there, as far as being able to read the room, being able to read me? Can they listen twice as much as they talk? So those are the types of things. Most of the skill sets that a new grad might have, they're really going to need to be taught to them in order to fit into our technology space. And we're well equipped to do that. We're well equipped to do that. And it's easier if we have somebody who is ambitious, willing to learn, takes notes, is thoughtful, can read the room. Because ultimately, these are the people who we're going to put in front of a client. Is this somebody I want to be in front of a client? Do they present well? So that type of presentation skills and having a good sense of themselves and how they think and organize and sequence events is what I'm trying to gather.
Absolutely. And finally, Tessa, if you can speak from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. I'm intrigued by the other answers because I've never been an interviewer myself. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward, just a couple of rounds of interviews, the STAR interview technique. I know that there are different requirements. People, I think that there are more involved processes for different streams, but yeah, it was quite straightforward. And I imagine that what Scott has said is correct, that you just need to be able to present well.
Absolutely. Thank you. We do have another question from Brandon Alata. Thank you for the question. Brandon right here is applying for grad roles and would love to hear how one can better position oneself for a role during interviews. So maybe if I could expand on that question a bit, Brandon, should one go on a LinkedIn bench? Should one already know the name of the HR representative before one even sends through the resume? Like, what is one that can do that can really position themselves in a really advantageous position where they can just go in the interview and just be like, you know, they have the best chance possible moving forward? Perhaps if you don't mind, Tessa, I'll get back to you and we'll do a turnaround.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not 100% sure, but just being prepared, I guess, was the best advice that I got, and, you know, getting a good night's sleep. Not really sure what else to suggest.
Scott, perhaps you can shine some light on this.
Sure, happy to do so. I would say if you're interested in a firm, do your homework. Find out about the firm, find out about the people, what masters that they've worked on, show some interest in what you're trying to do, and then customize your resume to fit the job. You should have 3, 4, 5 different types of resumes based upon the various types of consulting roles that you want to pursue. So make sure you've done your homework, you know the people, you know the practice, you know what they're working on, who their big clients are, what their revenue is, where they're located. Be prepared.
Alison, you also spoke about, you know, do your homework. You know, is there anything else other than what Scott has told us that you can kind of shine a light on?
I think I'd take it one step further. So now that you know about your target firm, what is it about you that actually matches to that? And be careful about that. So with a firm like BCG, it's a big prestigious place to work. If your answer is, I want to work at a big prestigious place, it's not a very compelling answer. I heard you did this work on this kind of project. I read your report on this. It resonated with the studies I did in this field as well. I actually passed your report on to so-and-so and was able to use it in this way. I would love to know more about this work. And I think I have this expertise I could bring to a project like this. You may have made it up, but if it's real, that will come through in how you sell yourself. And that genuine curiosity together with, I've got practical skills I could bring to these kinds of problems that matter to your firm, whether it's ours or anyone else's, are going to be really powerful.
Wonderful. James, any kind of last thing you'd like to add to that?
If you have the luxury of time, apply to slightly more rather than slightly fewer places, because it can take a while to get that story about yourself right. And I know I didn't the first time. You can practice offline, and you should, but BCG was the last place I applied to in quite a long list. And I know for certain that by the time I got to that interview, my thinking about why consulting, about what things about me were relevant in the interview, just would have come in leaps and bounds by virtue of having had a bunch of interviews. Some go worse than others, you know, better than others, worse than others, and have the time to reflect.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. We still have around 15 minutes, so question chat is still open for anyone. But yeah, I think I like to kind of, now that we're talking about, you know, respective firm, maybe we'll just stick with that kind of line of thinking. I just like to understand a little bit more about like the soft culture in terms of your respective firms. Like, is there like you know, when we think of corporate, we think of suits and ties and, you know, makeup on points and natural, and, you know, you have a hues. Is that really true? Can one kind of I noticed that, James, you have painted nails. Like, you know, is that something that, you know, one feels comfortable? You know, they can come in with a dyed hair, or they come with a funky pin or something. You know, can you guys speak on the culture of that? We'll start with James first.
Sure, thanks, Matt. I can confirm that I had my nails done like this when I was working with a mining client, and all of my managers were completely fine and found it hilarious that I was running workshops with the nails done that way. And it, no one had any issues with it, and it probably built rapport with them. I bought 2 suits before I started BCG. I've worn neither of them once. I think there are probably some consultancies that you might call more traditional or conservative, where it's a suit every day. There are others that are much less so. I think we fall into that second bucket, not universally, but it's a place where people are happy wearing a t-shirt into the office. It's about what you say, not how you say it. And it's not hierarchical because everyone can have a great idea.
That sounds lovely. Alison, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think there's a lot of room to be yourself in the firm. I think, having said that, there is a trope around professionalism and what professionalism looks like, which to a certain extent aligns with authenticity, as James has so eloquently described. But I think there is to a certain extent a front that you do put on in certain contexts. I say that I work with government clients, and being able to match your style to that culture, and then banks are quite similar, and be able to comfortably function within that is an important skill. And to be comfortable putting on the mask or putting on the jacket when you need to, knowing that you're wearing Ugg boots underneath, and Zoom is a great leveler in that. So, I would encourage people to feel like I can function in this world, but it doesn't define my whole self. Is a good way of thinking about it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. To be honest, I'm wearing track pants underneath, so so I can attest to that Zoom casualness here. Scott, how is FTI like? In terms of being able to be yourself.
Yeah, I think FTI is a relatively open environment to a certain extent. Yes, we are a professional organization. And I think that definition is constantly being refined, especially today in COVID-19 days. I think the firm is frankly just relaxing more because we're now seeing each other in our comfy clothes at home with children and dogs and cats around. And so I think the entire industry is taking a step back as to the formal, 4 days a week, wear a suit type of approach. FTI has never been a force you to wear the suit type of place. Fridays, we usually have an encourage, wear jean day. But we do encourage people to dress for their day. If they're going to be meeting with clients, dress appropriately. And you don't ever want to address a client in something that might offend them. So think about who your audience is.
Absolutely. And finally, Tessa, can you speak about Accenture for us?
Sure. I would echo that it depends on the client, as Alison said. I've worked for both banking and government clients, and they're both quite conservative in the dress codes. But yeah, I agree that having started to work from home, everybody has become a bit more casual. And because usually you'd be working like a big office or something, and now I just work with the people that I see every day who are my teammates, and so we're all a bit more casual. But also I would say that the tech stream is probably more casual than the consulting stream. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could imagine more of a Silicon Valley vibe. You have your little t-shirt and jeans going on. I think what some of our audience would love to know is something, Scott, you touched on, customize your resume. But, for someone, let's say someone in an undergraduate position where the only kind of job that you had was a hospital job or a retail job, what else should we put, down there? Like if we haven't had, we haven't conducted a merger between $2 million companies, what do we put there that really stands out? Maybe I'll start with Scott first and then turn around.
Well, to the extent that you have some experience that would relate to that company, certainly put that, customize it. Maybe you put that first, maybe you put that second, put your education, whatever resonates best put that forward to the extent that you're sending your resume to somebody who you've researched, you've done the preparation. Let's say they were part of a sailing club and you happen to be a sailor. Well, put that in your interest, you know, make that a mission part of, maybe part of your, even your cover letter. So you present yourself in finding commonalities as to, and going to the point that Allison was making, where's the connection? Why should I be working at that firm? How are we connected, and how can I help, and how can we have that relationship together? So find that commonality and then customize your documentation accordingly.
Alison, is there anything you'd like to add to what Scott has just said?
So I was exactly in that position as a arts graduate with not much to my name, and that applying for government roles, but it's a similar kind of process, right? So being able to highlight the things I felt I'd taken away from my degree, things I was passionate about, but things I'd achieved. For us in the queer community, we have some particular experiences around resilience and around leadership and around community that I reckon force us to grow up a little bit faster and harder than others. And so, you know, if that's relevant to you and you've played a role as a peer leader, or you've been able to shape a big change because that's important to you, because we are now part of a world where that's possible, that's a really powerful story to tell if it was done through a student context, done through a peer organisation context. I know it was one of the things that got me hired. I could show that I had life experience and maturity around how my life had come together up until that point. And that resilience was very, very important going forward. So don't discount some of those experiences that come from your queer identity and your queer networks, together with your academic achievements, together with what you might have done in your work. It all comes together, to Scott's point, around how you set that vision of a beautiful marriage.
You know, if I may elaborate on that point, I think that's really salient, Allison, in the fact that it's a two-way, when you're interviewing, it's a two-way street. I personally, in my last interview with FTI, I put on my resume that indeed I was a member of the queer community. I did that purposely, so, and this is me, you know, 15, 16 years ago, because I wanted to judge their reaction. If they were not going to be inclusive, this is not an organization that I wanted to be a part of. Having been, you know, working for law firms before, where you were a second-class citizen if you were queer. You didn't play on the same scale as everybody else. I did not want that to be my future. And so I put that on my resume, so it was right there, bold and front and center, because it was a test for them.
James, I'd love to hear from you.
I was in the position of having essentially one CV and struggling to tailor it. One of the things that helped me was thinking through the ways that each firm thought about themselves. So often, you know, firms will have, well, at least as the way I perceived it at the time, like, you know, a view that maybe we're a smaller boutique firm, which means we work with accounts on a longer term relationship with very tailored things, working deeply embedded with them. Or maybe there's a firm that goes, actually, we don't do tailored products as much. We sort of have big offerings we expand upon and then sort of plug and play those. Or, you know, we have this type of sector mix or this type of client. And often, regardless of what that story they talk about themselves is, you can explain why that excites you, because often it's a personality thing. You can say how you'd love to work at a firm that works deeply with a small number of people, or you love the variety of constantly changing industries. And to an extent, they can't prove or disprove it because everyone can say those things. So it's sort of a way to show that you've done the homework and that you're a good fit for the culture.
Absolutely. Tessa, if we can just finish off this question and perhaps the night with you.
Yeah, sure. So really quickly, I'm not sure exactly what people look for, but most of the successful people that I know who work as analysts at Accenture have had some background perhaps in committees or groups or as volunteers, things like that, and have been able to really show like that they have a round personality and are able to bring something sort of authentic to work, because that's a huge part of it. Like you're going to be really, really involved in your community at work, and it's going to be a core sort of thing that you do as part of your life. So I've found that, yeah, a lot of people have got something like that on their resume. And I would say that in my interview, I actually did, I didn't intend to, but I did mention that I had experienced disability during my studies. It just sort of like came up, I guess. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody, but the interviewer, who was actually a managing director, was sympathetic, and we had a discussion about like inclusion and diversity, and I still know her pretty well.
That's lovely to hear. Actually, if we can just wrap it up perhaps with a minute with each and one of you, as we do have one last audience question from an anonymous attendee. Just very quickly, what is the best part of working in consulting, and why would you choose it over another career path? Maybe if I can start with James, Scott, Tessa, Alison, and then we'll finish up tonight.
I have had so much fun working on constantly changing problems with consistently fantastic people. And it's sort of been topics I never thought I'd enjoy, topics I knew I wouldn't, but thought I'd get something out of, and plenty that I came in wanting to try as well. Over the course of doing so, I've learned things I didn't realize I wanted to learn, and sort of I'm now in a position where, 2 years in, if I wanted to go do something else, I feel like I'd be better at that thing than if I'd gone straight into it. So tremendous learning with great people.
Absolutely. Scott?
Perhaps the greatest thing for me is the creative solution to helping people. Clients present to us with, serious problems for themselves, whether it's financial or perhaps it's even legal. And so we provide the solutions in that sense of, and helping somebody gives me a good sense that I can go home and sleep well at night.
Tessa?
Sure. Just day to day, I would say that it's the teamwork aspect of it that I really enjoy. The feeling of working with a group of really talented, really smart people to achieve a common goal in a mutually supportive environment is just incredibly rewarding, especially at a time when everyone is so isolated.
That's true. Finally, Alison, if we can finish us off for the night.
Consultant, you only get hired because something's really big and important. So you get to drop in at the best moment to help devise the solution, and then you get to leave when it gets boring again. Because so you're constantly moving from fascinating problem to fascinating problem, and intellectually the learning that comes with that, as well as the satisfaction of grappling with those big issues, it's hugely rewarding for me. I think second, you are working with universally fantastic people, your colleagues, your clients, and that teamwork and camaraderie that others have alluded to that comes together around that is rewarding in and of itself. And certainly, from my perspective, it's been a very rewarding career change and everything I've wanted out of it.
Thank you, Alison. Wonderful. That was a wonderful answer to a wonderful night. Thank you, anonymous attendee. Just before we're wrapping up, just want to say once again, thank you so much for your time here today, for coming and speaking to us. I'll be in touch a bit later with the final things, but also thank you for our attendees that I'm seeing already kind of pulling out. I appreciate that. Please enjoy the rest of your night. And thank you once again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Tessa. Oh, yes.